Hi guys, welcome back to Prima's webinar series. My name's Andrew and today we'll be covering contract revisions. Contract revisions are a great way of adding and deleting lines from a contract, updating your sell prices and reviewing a frequency and quantity of the customer's actual ordering habits. On today's webinar then we'll be covering what I've just previously said then, so how to actually update your contracts. We'll be covering how to import them and export them out, whether you want to work in an Excel spreadsheet, and also covering the actual contract grid manager, so making some bulk changes to your contracts themselves. With that being said then, let's jump into the live screen and we can take a look at how we can manage this in Prima. So immediately then in Prima on the left hand side, we've gone into contract and contracts. So in here we can search for a specific company, we can double click into them, and that'll then pull up with their contract. So immediately when you're in a contract, you'll see things like stock code, your descriptions, your sell price or market margin depending on your pricing method that you're using, amongst a whole lot of other information, one of which we'll be covering today is our frequency and our quantity. Obviously moving along, you do have some further information that might be relevant to you, things like your kind of averages, last cost prices, last cost dates, or pack sizes. If you are wanted to kind of see any of this information kind of to the front of the contract, you can right click the grid and use the show hide and reorder columns function. We do have a separate webinar on that if you want to see how it works, and that is something that works across every single grid in Prima. For today then, we are looking at kind of how to update contracts, how to actually use them in terms of a revision. So immediately, obviously, kind of first things first, simplest way to update a price if you are only wanting to do one item at a time. At the very bottom, if you highlight your line, you can update your selling price to a fixed amount. So say they're going from 15, I can update that to 20, and then hit Ctrl S on my keyboard or save at the top of the screen. That's one way of updating the actual selling price itself, so now that's being charged £20 to the customer. If, however, I want to actually change it from a standard pricing method, which we've got set here, to a markup margin, so one that works on the cost price using a percentage, can change that pricing type just there. And you'll see then that we can actually amend the markup to be a relevant field. Simple again, obviously just over typing it in. If you've made a change that you're not happy with, if you've not saved it yet, you can just press escape on the keyboard and that will revert back your change. There may be a kind of an opportunity where you actually want to highlight many lines at once to delete them off the contract. In Prima, very simple to do. If you've got an entire kind of bulk in a row that you want to do, you can click the top one, hold shift on your keyboard to highlight multiple and hit the delete icon at the very top. Alternatively, if you've got maybe a couple that are scattered through, you can click and then control click the additional ones and again click delete at the top, and that'll delete the items off the contract. Going into the actual revision then, how that works. Two fields that might be relevant to you here are the frequency and quantity fields. So frequency and quantities are relating to sales orders and the quantity that your customers ordered. The frequency field then is a number of sales orders since the last revision. The quantity is the actual item quantity. So say for example, if you've had 2 sales orders, both with a quantity of 5 on each one, your frequency will be 2 and your quantity will be 10. Going into the actual revision, how this works then, you can see here we've got some dates at the very top about our last updates, our last major revisions and our next major revisions. By default, next major revision is a year from when the last one's been completed. When it comes to this then, this is really good for actually reviewing your contracts. So your last major revision date obviously is the last time a major change has been made to this. So if you're ready to actually do a revision themselves, you've got a button up here that just says start revision. So if you click on start revision, very similar to what we've just seen there once it opens up, you've then actually got the same fields as what you're going to see in your main grid, but a little bit more flexible in terms of what you can do. So again, same function where you can shift click, you can control click and you can delete. Same again with the show hide and reorder columns. That's all available to you directly in there. With the revision itself, you can see things like your last sale price, your last cost, obviously your landed cost, your classifications, pricing rules, date modified, and of course your frequency and your quantity again. With a revision, what most people generally tend to do is export that out into Excel. So you've got a button in the top left. If you click on export and then save it to your relevant place, this will then open up our file in Excel. So in Excel then, you're going to see a very, very similar field to what you're seeing in Prima. Obviously, again, you're seeing your stock code, your description, and so on. However, what you are going to see is some columns at the very start that have got stars next to them. These are going to be really relevant if you're doing a contract update in Excel itself. So if I just expand these out, and also you can just click in the top left up there and then double click in between the columns, you can actually see then in here different things in terms of what your contract's actually doing, and this is the way that you're going to be updating it via the Excel spreadsheet. So the main ID itself is just the contract, and sub ID is the contract line, so nothing really to worry about there. That's just kind of some important information that Prima uses, but nothing that you guys will need to worry about. Going on from there then, you've got the pricing rule, and new price and new percentage. So the pricing rule itself, obviously S is standard, so a fixed sell price. M is then your market margin. Market margin is dependent on the system key that you've got set via Prima's administration. If, for example, then you're working in Excel and you're saying, actually, this BC10001 code, currently selling at 20, I want to update it to be 25, you can just pop it in there just like that. For our TX code, on the other hand, that's a fixed sell price. But what we actually might want to do is change it to a market margin. So I can, again, just pop in capital M. You can leave that new price column where it is, but now because we're doing a market margin, we're working on 20%. So in this example, as I've just said, I can pop in 20 to be our 20% market margin in there. And when we re-import this back in, which we'll go on to in just a second, that will then update that line from a fixed sell price of £35 to a market margin price using a 20% uplift. Going on from there, you've then got two fields as well, relating to your market margin. So you've got market minimum price and market maximum price. This is used then, say for example, if you've got an item at a 20% kind of margin, you actually might want to have a minimum selling price and a maximum selling price. This is going to be used to ensure that you're not selling it too cheaply or too expensively, depending on the supplier's cost price. Obviously, with a market margin cost price, that would mean that if the supplier's cost went up, your sell price would go up. If the cost price went down, your sell price would go down. Using these two fields here, you can sell an actual kind of a lower end and a higher end. Just in case the cost goes up, you still don't want to sell above or below a certain price, depending on which way it's come. So obviously from there, you've kind of maybe gone down your single contract, you've reviewed it all, you're happy with what you've done. Again, obviously moving over, you've seen things like frequency and quantity, so you might want to actually kind of get rid of certain items that maybe the customer's not ordered since the last revision, something like that. And now you actually want to get this back into Prima. So what we do then is take in this column here, so the ones that don't have the stars next to it. If we then move along to the very end, and shift and click to the very end, we're going to hit delete on the keyboard. So we're left with only the starred columns. By being left with only the starred columns, this allows you to import this file back in as a CSV file. So you can go to File, Save As, and Browse. And just for now, obviously, I'll just pop it on my desktop. But you can save that as a .csv. So this file itself then, to actually get that imported, this has to be done on your EDC machine. So on the EDC machine, you're going to go into your Documents folder, into this PC, into the C drive, into Prima v6. And then from here, you're going to go into the Imports folder. The file that we've just saved, so the ones with just the stars next to it, you're going to copy and paste into there. Your EDC will then pick it up, and it'll be imported back into Prima, into your revision. So if I just close that form now, and we're back in Prima. That's then imported back in. As we're in a revision, this essentially exists as a draft state. So if, say for example, you were importing something in, then maybe you've actually made some mistakes, you can just click cancel revision, and that means that all those changes you've made won't be applied. Alternatively though, if you are happy with what you've done, you then have two options in terms of what you can do to apply. So you've got apply major revision and apply interim. So apply interim revision, that would be the one that you'd do if you're not doing a kind of major change, if you just export it out, re-import it back in, but you actually want to retain your frequency and quantity since that last major revision date. So in terms of what we've got in here then, If we had, say, frequencies and quantities against our items, and we want them fully resetting back to 0, so we want to see kind of for the next year how much the customer's ordering, we'd then hit our apply major revision. By clicking apply major revision, frequency and quantities reset back to 0, and it's kind of like a completely fresh kind of history slate for that customer's contract for when you then view it again. Obviously the interim one would retain that frequency and quantity, but would still apply those prices you imported back in. So I'm going to click apply major revision. And what that's going to do is, might just take a minute just to load through, obviously it's loading through a lot of data. That's going to then apply it in onto the customer's live contract, and that's all live, ready to go straight away for them to then actually use and benefit from. Of course, there may be times then that you're actually going to maybe be wanting to make a larger change via a contract grid manager. So if I just close out of that then, and back in our main contract screen, we've then got a contract with a little cog next to it, and that's our kind of group update, our grid manager option. So if I click on that, for example, you'll then pop up with a little screen just here. And this is essentially going to be a good way as well that you can use to update contracts. So again, searching on a company. Doesn't make a difference which location you use as long as you're getting the right code, it's all the same account. So you can pop it in there, and obviously then you've got a few different search options in here. So just for now, we are just going to be covering one account, but we will have a third part on bulk updating contracts where we'll go into some more information on how to actually do a bulk update of contracts across many accounts at once. But for today, just a single account. So I'm just going to hit search in the bottom right. So by hitting search and then go into the results tab at the top, that's then going to actually again pull through a list of all the items, our sell price, our market margin, and our pricing rules. You can do things again like sorting. So say for example we want to see everything that's on a market margin. And then from there, depending on what you want to do, again you can shift click or you can control click. But say for example we're only interested in our market margin ones, we can highlight all of those. We can then right click and invert our selection and remove those that we've not selected. So anything that's left in here will then be changed by the amendments we're going to make in the change tab. Of course, obviously, maybe if you've accidentally made some incorrect choices, if you go back to that search tab and re-hit search, you'll see by number results at the bottom that that's, again, just loaded everything through. And obviously then you can research and do what you need to do in terms of your kind of search changes. So once you're happy with your selection, jumping back into that change tab, we've then got quite a few options on what you might want to do. So in here then, there may be the time where one item's been discontinued by a supplier, maybe a popular paper product, and you want just a direct replacement with a different item. So this would be particularly kind of useful maybe just for one item at a time. Say for example, if we're doing the kind of copier paper in there, so I'm going to remove those, leave the one in. I can actually replace that item with a different item in there. So you can choose your item code and hit search. By default, it'll try and match the unit to be the same. If not, it'll just use the replacement product's default unit. Going on from there then, you've then got the option to change the price type. So changing the price type, depending on the lines that you've got in there. So if I do another search, and again, obviously in here then I can actually search based on, say, market margin. I might want to change those market margin into a fixed sell price. So if I apply on that, you'll get a message to say that you're about to make this kind of price type change, just to really confirm definitely you know what you're doing. Clicking OK on that. What you'll then see is that these items then have then been updated to a fixed sell price. Of course, if you've made the wrong change again by accident, you can just change that back. And that'll then update it back and change it. If you were to change the price type, it would either retain the market margin and calculate a sell price for you, or retain the sell price and calculate the market margin if you are wanting to do that change. Next option then, you do have the option to remove from contract. Does what it says in the tin. If you were in a grid manager, you can just remove it like that. Below there then, you've then got some sell price kind of specific fields and market margin specific fields. So these fields here, obviously you're going to be kind of adjusting it by a fixed amount. So maybe putting up by 10, obviously that would be the £10 or 10%. So say for example, if you had a selling price of £1, that would become 11. If you had a kind of a market margin of 1% and increased it by 10, that would then become 11%. Below there, you're then looking at adjusting by a fixed percentage. So you can put 50% on your selling price, or you can put 50% on top of the market margin that you've already got. You can then set your selling price to a fixed field. So obviously saying that for these items, I want them all to be £10. Just hit the option, pop 10 in there, and then click apply in the bottom right. Or alternatively, again, nice and easy in terms of updating one contract. If you're actually saying every single item on this contract that I've chosen, I want to actually set a selling price with a markup margin. So I can actually say, I want to set that selling price to be at 25% across our entire contract range. Tick that option, pop your 25 in there, click apply, and that'll then run through and update every single line that you've got selected via the bottom. The last option in the revision then is to use selected supplier for margin cost. So say for example, we've got an item where supplier A is a supplier against it as usual, which is our preferred supplier, but there is actually also a supplier B against it. You can search based on that supplier just up here and run a search in, so you're searching in tandem between the company and the supplier. Normally this is done then for a specific product code that you want to switch over. So you pop in your kind of supplier that you want to use for that market margin cost and the product code in there and run the search. In the change tab then, what this is essentially going to do, if you tick both of these in tandem, so both of them need to be ticked, by using a selected supplier for margin cost, it'll be using that supplier from the first screen, but then actually using their cost price to then set that markup margin. So say for example, if your preferred supplier's cost against a product is £10, but the supplier that you searched on in the first screen is then £5, and we're applying that 25% margin, it means that the sell price will be applied against that £5 cost price. So in terms of the actual grid managers then, that is a very kind of simple, quick way of doing a simple contract revision on one customer's account. So coming out of that, obviously all those changes that you make in terms of that will actually update the contract directly in, as long as a revision is not open. If you were wanting to make contract kind of bulk changes in terms of the grid manager, but you weren't wanting to go live just yet, you can start a revision and leave it open, then go into the contract grid manager, run your changes, and they'll go into that open revision, which will almost exist as a draft. Once you're actually happy with that, you can then apply to make those changes live. So that's about all we've got to cover for today then. So as you've kind of seen, we've covered contract revisions, we've covered what the benefits are, so how to update a contract in bulk, how to make quick changes, how to work in Excel. And of course, we've then covered the actual kind of grid manager functions, how to make the changes that you need to for a specific account if you need to set a certain sell price, a certain market margin across it, or obviously things like replacing items, adding and removing lines in terms of a contract. So with that being said then, that's me done for today. I hope you've really enjoyed today's video, and I really hope, if obviously you do enjoy the videos, that you would like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that bell icon to make sure you get notifications for when we go live with our regular webinar updates. So have a great day, and I hope everything goes well with your contract changes. Bye for now.